But at 2 o'clock in the morning in February, with a blizzard pressing down on every street and corner, it came as close as it ever would. Marcus Johnson had learned to love these hours. The silence, the predictability, the way the world asked nothing of him except to drive home without incident. 40 minutes left to his apartment. He knew this drive by heart. Left on Mayfield, right on Route 9, through the warehouse district where nothing moved except wind and his truck. Past the shuttered factories that used to employ thousands, now they employed nobody. Past the neighborhoods where people still lived, still loved, still hoped, despite every signal the city sent that their presence was temporary. He'd worked the night shift for 12 years. 12 years of driving through sleeping streets, checking grid monitoring systems, responding to electrical faults before they became fires. The work was stable, the hours were punishing, the pay was enough. As long as enough didn't require too precise a definition. His daughter Zara was asleep in his apartment. 7 years old, she had his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn disposition. One arm always hanging off the bed. Waking up ready to argue about everything. Why she had to go to school. Why carrots were different from potatoes. Why her dad couldn't work during daytime hours like normal fathers. Raising her alone had not been the plan. Plans, Marcus had learned over the past 3 years, were something you made before you understood what life actually cost. His ex-wife Claire had left quietly, and with an honesty that made it almost worse. "I can't do this version of things," she'd said. Not cruelly, not dramatically. Just with the certainty of someone who finally understood that she was drowning and needed to save herself. Marcus hadn't asked her to explain which version she meant. Every night when he came home, he checked on Zara before turning off any lights. That was the whole of his ritual. That was enough. He'd applied once to an advanced electrical engineering program through the city. A 2-year track that could have moved him from maintenance into design. From fixing the grid to building it, he'd been accepted. Then he'd looked at the schedule, realized there was no one to pick Zara up from school on the days his shift ran long, and withdrew his application. 4 days before the deadline, he'd told himself he'd apply again next cycle. He had not. He was, in the way of many men who'd quietly absorbed too many losses, extremely good at convincing himself he was fine. The road ahead was mostly empty, just his headlights pushing back the blizzard, just the steady rhythm of the windshield wipers, just the heater working overtime against the cold pressing in from all sides. This was his favorite part of the night, the part where he existed in a pocket outside everything, where nothing could reach him except his own thoughts. That's when he saw it. Not at first. First his mind registered the blinking lights before his eyes did. Hazard lights, yellow and weak, blinking in slow weakening pulses like something running out of time. A black sedan. Expensive and wrong for this neighborhood. Parked half on the curb along the edge of Riverside Park. The kind of car that cost more than he made in 2 years. The kind of car that didn't break down on this side of town. Marcus took his foot off the accelerator. He should have kept driving. He knew he should have kept driving. But something in his chest, some stubborn refusal to abandon suffering he could possibly prevent, made him ease onto the shoulder about 30 feet ahead of the sedan. He turned on his hazards, cut the engine, and stepped out into the blizzard. The wind hit him immediately, snow that felt sharp enough to cut. His work jacket, thick as it was, didn't stand much of a chance against this kind of cold. He pulled it tighter and walked back toward the sedan, his boots crunching in the fresh snow, his breath visible in clouds that the wind immediately scattered. She stood beside the car in a wool coat that was clearly not built for this temperature. No hat, no gloves. Just expensive fabric and expensive composure in the middle of a February blizzard, like she'd never learned the cost of being unprepared. Her dark hair was styled in a way that suggested it had cost money. The kind of deliberate, maintained look that required resources. She had a face that made you stop looking at other things, even in the blizzard, even with the cold settling into her posture. She had a composure that made Marcus feel like he was the one intruding on her morning. She saw his headlights and straightened. Not panicked, not desperate, the way someone straightens when they've already decided what they're doing and are simply waiting for you to understand. "Your car?" Marcus asked. His voice came out rougher than he'd intended. His body was already beginning to register the cold, already fighting against it. "Engine died about 20 minutes ago," she said. Her voice was low and precise, the way someone speaks when they've calculated every word. "I've been trying to restart it, but—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Marcus could see the dead interior, the unresponsive electronics, the weight of mechanical failure sitting in that luxury sedan like a judgment. "I can call someone for you," he said, reaching for his phone. "I know a couple of—" She moved in 3 quick steps and placed her hand on his arm. Her skin was ice. "Don't call anyone," she said quietly. And then, when he didn't respond immediately, "Don't call anyone, and don't tell anyone you saw me." Not a plea, not panic, the quiet instruction of someone who had already made the decision and was simply waiting for him to catch up. Marcus's hand stopped moving toward his phone. Something in the way she held his eyes told him that running would be worse than staying. That this was a woman who didn't ask for help she didn't absolutely need, and when she did ask, it mattered. "I need you to drive me somewhere," she said. Still not a request, a statement of fact, delivered by someone who'd never had to ask for what she needed. I'm not going anywhere with someone I don't, he started. Marcus, she said, and his blood went cold because she knew his name. She actually knew his name. I'm not in danger. I'm not hurt. I just need time that nobody is tracking. That's all I need from you. She knew his name. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted. This was a woman carrying weight. This was a woman holding herself together through sheer familiarity with the technique. He recognized it because he did the same thing every day. Where? He asked. Away from downtown. Somewhere public, but not too public. Somewhere where we can think for 20 minutes without security finding us. Security. She said it like they both knew what that meant. He should have said no. Should have gotten back in his truck and driven away. Back to his routine. Back to the safety of his predictable life. Should have called 911 and let the police handle whatever this was. Instead, he opened the passenger door. Get in, he said. My truck's warm. She moved quickly then, abandoning the dead sedan without a backward glance, sliding into the passenger seat of his truck with the kind of grace that seemed wrong for someone running from something. Marcus climbed back into the driver's seat. The warmth hit him like a relief. He pulled back onto the empty road. They drove in silence for the first 5 minutes. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, aware of her in the passenger seat the way you're aware of something beautiful and dangerous sitting close to you. His heater worked overtime, fighting the cold that seemed to have settled into both of them. Thank you, she said finally. I haven't helped you yet, he replied. Exactly. He drove her to a 24-hour diner 2 miles east, a place called Rivera's. It existed in the gap between night and morning, serving truck drivers and insomniacs and people whose lives didn't fit normal schedules. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a couple of vehicles belonging to the night crew. He parked in the back where they'd be visible from inside but not from the road. They sat in a corner booth under fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly worse than it was. Marcus ordered coffee. She ordered the same, but didn't touch hers when it arrived, just wrapped both hands around the cup like it was the only solid thing left in her world. His phone lit up as they sat there. A notification. The kind he'd set up months ago because Harmon Capital had a contract tied to the city grid he maintained. He'd set it to watch them, the way you watch someone who might affect your life. The photo on the screen showed her face, professional and composed. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at the woman across the table. She knew he'd seen it. She didn't look away. How long have you known? She asked. Since we walked in, he said. Financial news alert. I track your company, electricity contract with the city grid. And you're still here. Marcus turned his coffee cup once in his hands. You haven't given me a reason to leave yet. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, without looking at the window, without softening it, if I sign that contract Friday morning, 312 families lose their homes. Marcus didn't answer immediately. The words sat between them like something alive, something that needed space to expand. Not because the project fails, she continued, because it succeeds exactly the way the people behind it planned. He turned his coffee cup again, his mind running calculations he didn't want to make. He'd grown up 11 blocks from the Riverside corridor. He'd watched that neighborhood get revitalized when he was 19, watched the laundromats and barbershops and corner stores get replaced by boutiques and coffee chains, and developer visions of what a neighborhood should be. His parents had owned a small row house there. They'd sold it in 2005, before the major development push. Made decent money, used it to put him through the first 2 years of community college. He'd watched other families not be so lucky. Watched them priced out. Watched them scattered across 3 counties because the neighborhood they'd built got commodified and sold. You're from there, Victoria said quietly. That's why you pulled over. That's why you couldn't drive past me. I don't know anything about you, he said. I don't know your name. I don't know if you're telling me the truth. I don't know why I should believe that a woman like you would throw away $500 million and her family for 312 families you don't know. My name is Victoria Ashford, she said, and you're right to not believe that. Not yet. But you're going to listen anyway, because you need to know what you walked into. And maybe because you need to know that some of us do see what's happening. Some of us do care, even when caring costs everything. Victoria Ashford studied him across the table with a composure that seemed both natural and performed. The wool coat she wore cost more than his truck payment. The jewelry on her wrists marked her as someone who'd never worried about money the way Marcus worried about money. Tell me about the merger, Marcus said. Tell me the real version. My father built Ashford Development 30 years ago, Victoria began. Her voice had the rhythm of something she'd rehearsed, but her hands trembled slightly. Started with a single property management office in Baltimore. Grew it into one of the Mid-Atlantic's largest development groups. He believed in development that served people, not people that served development. She paused, took a breath. 22 months ago, he had a heart attack. Swift, unglamorous, the way he would have wanted it. He left me the company with a condition written into the trust structure. I was to retain controlling interest for a minimum of 5 years before any sale or merger could be finalized without unanimous board approval. He knew someone would try, Marcus said. He knew my Uncle Richard would try. He didn't anticipate how efficiently Richard would work. Victoria's jaw tightened. The merger with Stratton Development was Richard's project from the beginning. It's structured to look like growth. What it is in practice is a rezoning play. Rezoning! Marcus repeated the word like it tasted bad. 3 neighborhoods in the city's lower income corridor. Riverside, Douglas, Morrison Hill would be reclassified as mixed commercial zones within 18 months of closing. Once the classification changes, residents who've lived there for decades have no legal protection. Their property taxes spike, housing prices climb, developers buy them out at a profit. The families get displaced, scattered, and the developers make an absolute fortune building luxury apartments and boutique retail. Marcus felt something go cold in his chest that had nothing to do with the blizzard. How much? He asked. How much profit? Stratton gets 60% of the development rights. My uncle gets 25% as executive advisor. That's $75 million for him personally. Maybe more if the market holds. Victoria's voice had gone hard. I found my father's handwritten notes about an early version of this proposal. 8 months before he died, Richard showed him the plan. My father wrote down, "This is not what we built this for." He refused to proceed, but he died before he could restructure the trust to prevent what comes next. And nobody else on the board knows what he was thinking? Marcus asked. I'm the only person who has seen that note. I've kept it. I've kept it because it's the only thing that says my father understood what Richard was trying to do. Marcus looked at her hands. They were still shaking. Not from cold anymore, from fear, from carrying this alone. How did you find out Richard was moving forward? He asked. An email chain I wasn't supposed to see. Richard forwarding documents to Stratton's executives. Talking about a board vote. Talking about the profit margins. Talking about... She stopped. Took a breath. Talking about the families like they were an accounting problem to be solved. And the board? Marcus asked. The board will do what Richard tells them to do. He's been building his influence there for years. 3 members are his friends. 2 more have financial interests in Stratton. That's 5 votes right there. He only needs 1 more out of 9. You could vote against, Marcus said, and that makes it 5-4. Maybe 5-5 if someone switches. He moves the vote until he gets 1 more person. Or he takes me to court and ties everything up in litigation for years. Meanwhile, the families in those neighborhoods are already starting to hear rumors. Property values are already beginning to change. The process of displacement doesn't start with the legal signature. It starts with knowing someone wants you gone. Marcus stood up. He didn't mean to. His body just decided it needed to move. He walked to the window of the diner and looked out at the parking lot, at the pre-dawn darkness, at the blizzard that was beginning to ease. How many families? He asked without turning around. Total. In the 3 neighborhoods? Maybe 312? Maybe more. We haven't done a full census. The developers don't care about exact numbers. 312 families. He knew people in that number. Had lived there as a teenager. Had watched change happen once already. Watched neighborhoods gentrify. Watched people he grew up with scatter to the suburbs and beyond. He'd thought about moving back there sometimes. Back to the neighborhood where rent was cheap and memories were expensive. Had thought about it for Zara's sake. About giving her roots in the place that had given him his first sense of belonging. I'm from there, he said, turning back to face her. Riverside Corridor. My parents owned a house there until I was 19. I know, Victoria said quietly. How could you possibly know that? Because you told your dispatcher where you'd be Thursday night. Because I had someone check the grid worker roster. Because I found your file. Because I needed to know who I was asking for help. Something cold moved through Marcus's chest. Not fear exactly, but a recognition of how thoroughly exposed he was. How little privacy any of them actually had. When someone with money and resources decided they needed to know about you. You were choosing me, he said. I was choosing someone from that community. Someone who couldn't ignore what was happening because he'd lived through it once already. Someone who might understand that I'm not doing this for publicity or penance. I'm doing this because I can't live with the alternative. Marcus sat back down. The coffee in his cup was cold now. He drank it anyway. Why would you throw away $500 million? He asked. Why would you destroy your own company? Your career? Your family relationships for this? Because, Victoria said quietly, my father died trying to protect something he believed in. And I inherited his company, his name, and his conscience. I could spend the rest of my life accepting the inheritance and ignoring the conscience. Or I could do what he would have done. The board vote is tomorrow? Marcus asked. Friday morning. The meeting is at 9 a.m. The contract signing is scheduled for 11 a.m. If the vote happens, it's over. The merger closes within 30 days. The rezoning process begins. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. So we have... Marcus checked his phone. It was 4:15 a.m. We have 31 hours. We have 31 hours to make sure the board understands what they're voting on. We have 31 hours to prevent my uncle from getting another single vote. We have 31 hours to make this matter. "What do you want from me?" Marcus asked. The question hung in the space between them like something concrete. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, long enough that Marcus thought she might not answer. "I need to disappear," she said finally. "For the next 36 hours, I need to be somewhere my uncle's security can't find me. I need to be off the grid. No cameras, no phone tracking, no pattern they can follow. And I need someone who understands what's at stake, who believes in what needs to happen, who can help me figure out what actually matters here." "You need an accomplice," Marcus said. "I need a partner," Victoria corrected. "Someone who can think clearly about what comes next." Marcus thought about Zara, thought about her asleep in his apartment, the way she slept with one arm hanging off the bed, like she owned all the space in the world. Thought about her in 7 years, or 10 years, growing up in a neighborhood that either held itself or scattered itself, based on what the next 48 hours contained. He thought about the engineering program he'd never done, the 2-year track that could have taken him from maintenance to design. He'd withdrawn his application 4 days before the deadline, because there was no one to pick Zara up from school. On the days his shift ran long, he'd sacrificed a life trajectory for a 7-year-old girl. He'd done it not thinking, just done it because that's what fathers do. But sometimes fathers had to do more than just show up. Sometimes fathers had to risk things. "If I help you," Marcus said slowly, "and we get caught, I lose my job." "Yes." "My clearance with the city goes away. My career in infrastructure maintenance is finished." "Yes." "And my daughter loses the stable parent she has left." Victoria flinched, just barely, but Marcus saw it. "I didn't know about your daughter until a moment ago," she said quietly. "And yes, you're right. If this goes wrong, you lose everything that matters most to you. I can't promise you it won't go wrong. I can't guarantee that we'll succeed. I can't promise that trying won't destroy things you've worked 12 years to build." Marcus looked at his phone again. The time read 4:23 a.m. He thought about calling Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door, who had watched Zara before. He'd need to tell her something about a work emergency. He'd need to lie to the most trustworthy person in his life. "Why not go to the police?" he asked. "Why not bring this to authorities?" "Because my uncle is connected to authorities. His lawyer is the city's former prosecutor. His business partner is married to a municipal judge. If I go to police with this, they investigate slowly. Richard gets wind of it quickly, and he either covers his tracks or moves the vote up. I've got 31 hours where I'm still in control. After that, I'm not." She was right. Marcus knew she was right, in the way you know true things, deeply, without needing all the evidence. "Okay," he said, I'll help you." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. My daughter is sleeping in my apartment, thinking her father is at work. My ex-wife is still responsible for her legally, but she made it clear 3 years ago that she wants nothing to do with raising her. So there's just me. There's just been me for a long time. And I didn't let this neighborhood die the first time by accident. I didn't really do anything to prevent it. But I can do something now. So I'm doing it." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She didn't let them fall, but they were there. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet," Marcus replied. "We still have to survive the next 31 hours. They left the diner separately. Marcus paid the bill, left a generous tip for the waitress who'd refilled Victoria's untouched coffee 5 times, and walked out into the parking lot where the blizzard was finally beginning to ease. The sky was still dark, still heavy with snow, but the driving quality had shifted. What had been dangerous was becoming merely difficult. Victoria waited for 10 minutes, then texted him from a borrowed phone. "I'm ready." He picked her up 2 blocks away, in an alley behind a shuttered hardware store, where she wouldn't be caught on the main street cameras. She climbed into the passenger seat of his truck, bringing with her the cold and the smell of expensive perfume, and the weight of 31 hours that were already beginning to feel impossibly short. "I know a place," Marcus said. "Motel about 40 minutes east. Used to use it for work meetings. It's cheap, anonymous, far enough from downtown that nobody searches this direction." "Your dispatcher will know you're not working your route," Victoria said. "I'll call in sick. I haven't taken a personal day in 3 years. They won't question it." They drove through the pre-dawn darkness, the city slowly revealing itself around them. As the storm eased, Marcus thought about the grid underneath the city, the web of electricity that powered every home, every business, every traffic light and hospital and school. He thought about how he maintained that grid at night, so everyone else could use it during the day, and he thought about how the very people he kept safe, people like Victoria's Uncle Richard, were building systems designed to displace the people he grew up with. The motel was called the Ambassador, which was funny because there was nothing ambassadorial about it. One story, faded yellow paint, office that didn't open until 6 a.m. Marcus had a key to a back entrance from years of using it for infrastructure meetings. They parked behind the building, out of sight from the main road. The room was small, clean enough, with 2 double beds and a view of the parking lot. Marcus helped Victoria inside, locked the door, and immediately started thinking strategically about what came next. "Your phone," he said. "Give it to me." "What?" "They're tracking it. If your uncle's security is any good, and they will be, your phone will be pinging towers, creating a digital breadcrumb trail. We need you completely off the network." Victoria hesitated for just a moment, then removed her phone from her bag. It had been buzzing constantly since they left the diner. Calls, texts, notifications. She handed it to Marcus like it was a bomb. He powered it down, removed the SIM card, and put it all in an envelope that he sealed and marked, "To be opened when legal." They'd need that evidence later, that her phone had been off the grid, that she couldn't have been coordinating anything, that she'd been genuinely unreachable. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "Now we figure out what we're actually doing," Marcus said. "Not the general version, the specific version. What exactly do you need to do to stop this merger?" Victoria moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot. At the empty motel lot where no one would think to look for a CEO worth $500 million. She took a breath. "I have files," she said, "files my father kept. Files I've gathered. Communications proving my uncle's intent. I have emails showing that he knew the rezoning would displace families and that he chose to proceed anyway. I have recordings from board meetings where ethical concerns were raised and explicitly dismissed. But having that evidence and proving it are two different things. Without me backing that evidence up, without me going public, it's just noise." "Then we go public," Marcus said. "But the board vote is tomorrow morning. If I go public before then, Richard's lawyers file an emergency injunction. They claim I'm unstable. They move for temporary control of the company. And they sign the merger before I can stop them. And if we wait until after the vote, then it's signed. It's legal. It takes years of litigation to unwind it. Years during which the rezoning process begins. Years during which families start panicking, start selling at discounted rates, start losing everything. Marcus understood the trap perfectly. Go public now, lose control of the company, wait until after the vote, lose the families. There was no winning move available to Victoria, only different ways of losing. "So we need something in between," he said. "Something that makes the board understand what they're voting on, without giving your uncle time to neutralize you." They had been strategizing for 3 hours when Victoria noticed something. "You keep checking your phone," she said. Marcus stopped. He hadn't realized he was doing it. "What time is it?" she asked. 6:47 a.m. "Zara," Victoria said. It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't answer, which was the same as confirming. "You need to be home," Victoria said. "She wakes up expecting you to be there. She's with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. I told her I had a work emergency. But Zara will still be scared. She'll still be wondering where you are." Marcus looked at the woman sitting across from him on the motel bed, really looked at her. Saw the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of her own impossible choice. And suddenly, with perfect clarity, he understood what she was asking of him. "How old?" Victoria asked. 7. "Her name?" "Zara." The words hung in the small motel room like something fragile. Victoria stood and walked to the window again. She was quiet for a long time, long enough that Marcus thought she might not come back from wherever her mind had gone. Then she said without turning around, "I'm asking you to choose between her safety and my cause." "That's not fair." "No," Marcus agreed, "you're not. You're asking me to choose between her comfort and 312 families losing everything. That's different." "Is it?" "Yes," Marcus said, "because she's fed, she's safe, she's got a roof over her head. Yes, she'll be scared. Yes, she'll miss me. But she won't lose her home. She won't lose her neighborhood. She won't grow up scattered and uprooted the way the people I grew up with did. I can ask her to be scared for 48 hours. I can't ask the families in Riverside to accept losing everything." Victoria finally turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. "Show me," she said. "What?" "Show me your daughter. Show me who you're risking." Marcus understood what she was asking. She wasn't just asking for information. She was asking to carry the weight he was carrying. She was asking to understand, in concrete terms, what his choice actually cost. He pulled up the photos on his phone. The most recent one, taken 2 weeks ago. Zara mid-laugh, missing her front teeth. Complete and unself-conscious joy captured in a moment. Victoria looked at the photo. Her face changed. It was the kind of change that happens when you finally see something you've been trying not to see. When someone you've kept at a distance becomes suddenly undeniably real. "I'm asking you to risk her," Victoria said quietly. "You're not asking me anything," Marcus replied. "I'm telling you yes. I'm choosing this, and you need to understand the full weight of that choice. Because if we're going to do this, we're both going to need to carry it." By mid-morning, they'd developed a skeleton of a plan. Victoria would reach out to a journalist she trusted, someone from the Baltimore Chronicle who'd covered Ashford development stories in the past. They'd provide the evidence. Board communications, her father's handwritten note, financial documents proving the profit motive, The journalist would sit on the story until 6 p.m., giving them time to reach key board members privately, showing them the evidence before the press released it. If the board saw the evidence through the press, they'd panic. They'd either demand an emergency explanatory meeting, or they'd vote to proceed anyway, knowing that one outcome was legal and the other was just ugly. But if Victoria could show them the evidence first, if she could make them understand that Richard had played them, that they were either complicit or ignorant, and neither option was good. Some of them might switch their votes. It was a fragile plan. It required dozens of things to break right, but it was better than nothing. Marcus's phone buzzed at 10:34 a.m. The text was from Mrs. Patterson. Zara woke up 2 hours ago, asked why her dad had to work at night instead of normal hours like other dads. I told her you were working. She's scared. Marcus read the message 3 times. He could feel Victoria watching him. Could sense the moment she understood something had shifted. She's scared, Marcus said. He wasn't asking a question. Yes, Victoria said quietly. Marcus stood and walked to the window. Outside, the blizzard had completely cleared. The morning was bright, cold, painfully clear. The kind of morning that shows you everything exactly as it is. We can stop, Victoria said. Right now. I can figure this out differently. You can't, Marcus said. Your uncle is better resourced, better connected. He has lawyers, security, board allies. You have files and one journalist and me. This is the only play you have. Then I need to meet her. What? Your daughter. I need to see her. I need to understand exactly what I'm asking of you. I can't do this without that weight. They drove back into the city at 11:30 a.m., taking surface streets instead of highways, avoiding the downtown area where cameras were dense. Marcus's apartment was in a neighborhood northeast of downtown. Modest, clean, the kind of place where working people raised families, and tried not to think about how precarious everything was. He parked in his assigned spot, looked up at the third-floor window where Zara's room was located, and felt something crack open in his chest. Just a few minutes, he said. That's all we can manage. Mrs. Patterson's watching her, but she's expecting me to pick her up by noon. Victoria nodded. They climbed the stairs. Marcus used his key to open the door. The apartment smelled like breakfast. Mrs. Patterson had made pancakes. It seemed in an attempt to distract Zara from her father's absence. Zara was in her room, sitting on her bed, fully dressed even though it was early morning, even though she'd normally still be in her pajamas on a day off from school. She looked up when she heard Marcus, and her face transformed, from scared to relieved so quickly that it hurt to watch. Daddy, she said, and then immediately, where were you? Mrs. Patterson said you were working, but you never work in the morning. I know, baby, Marcus said, crossing the room and pulling her into his arms. I had an emergency. I'm sorry. Over Zara's shoulder, he could see Victoria standing in the doorway, taking in the small room, the drawings on the wall, the evidence of childhood that existed in this apartment. Zara pulled back from Marcus and looked at him seriously. Are you okay? Yeah, he said. I'm okay. Are you sick? No. Then why did you leave? Victoria made a small sound, not quite a gasp, but something like it. The weight of the question seemed to hit her like a physical thing. I had to help someone, Marcus said carefully. Someone who needed help. And I knew you'd be scared, and I'm sorry for that. But I had to do it. Zara considered this with the brutal logic of 7-year-olds. Was it a bad person who needed help? No, Victoria said softly from the doorway. I'm not a bad person. I'm just someone who needed your dad to help me not make a really terrible decision. Zara looked at Victoria with the openness of children who haven't yet learned to hate. Are you the lady from the news? Zara asked. Victoria's breath caught. Have you seen something on the news? Mrs. Patterson had the TV on, Zara said. They were talking about a person named Ashford. Is that you? Yes, Victoria said. That's me. Did you do something bad? I was about to, Victoria said. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see her hands trembling. Your dad stopped me, or he's going to stop me. We're still working on that part. Zara nodded like this made perfect sense. Okay, she said. Daddy's good at stopping bad things. The statement hit both of them like a hammer. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, saw Victoria, and her eyes widened with recognition. Oh, she said. Oh, you're that CEO. Yes, Victoria said. I'm sorry to intrude on your morning. No, Mrs. Patterson said quickly. It's fine. Zara and I were just having breakfast. There are pancakes if you want them, Victoria declined politely. And Marcus extracted Zara from the bedroom with promises that they could all have breakfast later, once some things were figured out. He explained to Ms. Patterson that there was a work situation, that he'd be in and out, that Zara should probably stay with her a bit longer. Mrs. Patterson asked no questions. She knew Marcus. She knew he was trustworthy. And she had the instinct of older women to recognize when something important was happening, and to stay out of its way while still being useful. Back in his truck, Victoria was silent. You okay? Marcus asked. She asked if you were sick, Victoria said. When you didn't come home, her first thought was that something was wrong with you, that you were hurt. Kids think like that, Marcus said. She shouldn't have to. She should think her father's going to come home like he always does. And because of me, because I came to that diner, because you couldn't drive past me, she's scared that something's wrong. Marcus started the truck. She's also learning that sometimes doing the right thing costs something. That sometimes you do hard things not for reward, but because they need to be done. That's not a bad lesson to learn early. What if we fail? Victoria asked. Then she learns that sometimes doing the right thing still ends in failure. That's an even harder lesson, but it's still a necessary one. Back at the motel, they moved from skeleton to full plan. Victoria printed out the documents she'd brought. Careful copies of her father's handwritten note. Financial projections showing the profit margins. Email chains showing Richard's discussions with Stratton's executives. She'd also brought recordings of board meetings on a USB drive, which Marcus immediately made 3 backup copies of, storing them in different locations. These are the weapons, Victoria said, laying out the documents on the bed like a general preparing for battle. But weapons alone don't win wars. Context does. We need someone to explain what these mean. The journalist? Marcus asked. His name is David Chen. He covered my father's death when he died. He understood the company then. He'll understand it now. They spent 2 hours preparing a cover email to David, explaining the documents, providing context, asking him to hold the story until 6 p.m. Victoria wanted to reach out to board members personally at 3 p.m. Give them the evidence. Give them time to absorb it. Then let the journalist publish at 6 p.m. when there was no time for damage control. It was a risk. David could leak the story early. The board members could tip off Richard immediately. Something could go wrong at any of 100 points along the way. But it was a plan. And plans were better than desperation. One more thing, Victoria said. You need to know what comes after. What I'm going to do if this works. Marcus listened as she explained. Assuming the board voted against the merger, her uncle Richard would be finished at Ashford Development. The board would vote to remove him as executive director. He'd likely face legal consequences for fraud, but most importantly, Ashford Development would survive. And under Victoria's leadership, it would do something different. I want to establish a foundation, Victoria said, Ashford Foundation for Community Preservation. We use development capital not to displace families, but to help them stay. We work with the neighborhoods to create affordable housing, to stabilize communities, to prove that development doesn't have to be extraction. That's not making money, Marcus said. It's making different money. It's making meaning. My father understood that before he died. I'm just finally understanding it now. Marcus thought about the neighborhood he'd grown up in. Thought about Patricia and James and the young couple with the infant, who were all about to lose their homes if nothing changed. Thought about what it would mean for them, for Zara, for the next generation. If someone with power and resources actually chose community over profit? Okay, he said, let's make it happen. By 2 p.m., it was clear that Richard Ashford had discovered his niece was missing. A security firm had visited Marcus's work address. A different security firm had visited his apartment building. Someone had called the police and filed a missing persons report on Victoria, claiming she might be unstable, claiming they were concerned for her safety. Marcus received a coded text from a friend who worked in the municipal building. Your name came up in a security inquiry. Someone asking if you drove anyone anywhere late Wednesday night. I didn't confirm anything, just a heads up. The net was tightening. We need to move up the timeline, Marcus said. We can't wait until 3 p.m. We need to contact the board members now. Victoria nodded. She'd been expecting this. Make the calls, she said. Marcus used a burner phone he'd purchased that morning to call David Chen at the Chronicle. David was cautious at first. Victoria's name showing up as potentially unstable on a missing persons report was suspicious. But when Marcus explained about the board meeting, about the evidence, about the stakes involved, David's journalistic instincts took over. Send me the files, David said. I'll verify everything. But I'm running this story at 6 p.m. whether you like it or not. You need to understand that once this goes public, you can't control what happens next. We understand, Marcus said. Then he helped Victoria make phone calls to 3 board members she trusted. Members who'd known her father, who'd respected him, who'd expressed reservations about the merger in private conversations. The first one, Patricia Mulligan, agreed to read the documents. The second one, James Rivera, said he'd come to the motel to see Victoria in person. The third one, Harrison White, said nothing initially. Then called back 30 minutes later saying he wanted to meet but couldn't come to the motel. They arranged a meeting at a coffee shop across town. By the time James arrived at the motel at 4 p.m., Richard Ashford had moved his response up to emergency speed. Board vote was now happening at 7 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. He was trying to get the vote through before Victoria could be declared incompetent, before the evidence could be made public, before anything could stop him. We're out of time, James said. Looking at the evidence Victoria had laid out. He was an older man, had been friends with Victoria's father, had tears in his eyes reading the handwritten note. My God. Richard's been playing us. Has he been playing us the entire time? Not the entire time, Victoria said, but since my father died, yes. He calculated that I'd be too new, too young, too grieving to understand what was happening. He calculated wrong. The vote's at 7 p.m., James said. That gives us 3 hours. We can do a lot with 3 hours, Marcus said. We get Harrison from his coffee shop meeting. We reach Patricia and James with the documents. We send the story to David and let it break. We show the board that Richard has been exposed. It won't work, James said slowly. If Richard moves the vote up, it means he already has the votes he needs. He's not worried about exposure. He's moving forward because he thinks he can brazen his way through. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. James was right. Richard had calculated that his resources, his lawyers, his connections, the momentum of an already in motion deal would be enough to protect him, even if he looked bad. Then we stop it a different way, Victoria said. She stood, grabbed her jacket. We go to the board meeting. I go to the board meeting. I walk in there and I show them my face. I show them that I'm not unstable, not missing, not unfit. And I show them what they're actually voting on. Richard won't let you in the building, James said. He can't keep me out, Victoria said. It's my company. My name is still on the papers. Ashford Development occupied the top 4 floors of a downtown office building that overlooked the water. The kind of building that announced success the moment you walked through the doors. Marble, glass, original art. The physical manifestation of capital accumulation. Victoria and Marcus took the elevator to the 45th floor at 6:57 p.m., 9 minutes before the board meeting was scheduled to begin. Richard's security team was waiting. 2 large men in dark suits moved to block the elevator doors. Ms. Ashford, one of them said, we need you to come with us. I'm coming with you to my own board meeting, Victoria said. I'm attending as I have every right to do. We have instructions to prevent you from accessing the boardroom. Your uncle is concerned about your well-being. My well-being is fine, Victoria said. I'm attending my board meeting. Marcus stepped forward. He was smaller than either security guard, not as traditionally intimidating. But he carried himself like someone who wouldn't move, like someone who'd decided something and made peace with it. She's attending her board meeting, he said. You can call the police if you want, but she has legal right to be here. And if you physically prevent her from accessing the boardroom, that's assault. The security guards looked at each other. One of them spoke into a radio, and there was a moment of terrible quiet. Then the elevator doors closed, and they descended. It's not going to work, the guard said. The board's going to vote anyway. That's possible, Victoria said, but if they vote while I'm in the building, while I'm demanding to be heard, with documentation of fraud already in David Chen's hands, the story becomes different. The story becomes CEO prevented from attending her own board meeting while corrupt merger was pushed through. That's not a story Richard survives. The elevator doors opened on the 46th floor, and Victoria walked directly toward the boardroom. Richard was standing outside it with his lawyers. His face was a careful mask of concern. Victoria, he said, thank God. We've been so worried. Are you all right? Where have you been? I've been exactly where I needed to be, Victoria said, preparing for this meeting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to talk to the board. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Richard said. You're not well. You haven't been well since your father died. Your doctor has expressed concerns. My doctor will not be making any statements about my mental health without my consent, Victoria said. And my mental health is not in question. What is in question is your integrity. Now move. She walked past him. Richard gestured to security, but Marcus stepped between them. She's attending a meeting in her company, Marcus said. You can call police if you want to make this ugly. But everyone knows it's ugly. Everyone's about to know why. The boardroom doors were locked. Victoria knocked, and a moment later, Patricia Mulligan opened them. Victoria, Patricia said. Relief flooded her face. Oh, thank God. Come in. The boardroom was large, high-ceilinged, with a view of the harbor through floor-to-ceiling windows. 7 board members were seated around a mahogany table. Richard's 3 allies sat in a cluster. Patricia, James, and Harrison were on the other side. One board member, Thomas Worth, the oldest and most senior, sat neutral. I apologize for the interruption, Victoria said, but I need you to see something before you vote. She laid out the documents on the table. Her father's note, the financial projections, the email chains. She walked them through the rezoning plan, explained what displacement actually meant, showed them photos of the neighborhoods and the families who lived there. Your uncle has calculated that you're too invested in the merger to care, Victoria said. That legal momentum is more powerful than ethics. That profit is more convincing than people. He's counting on you to vote based on what's in front of you at this table, not based on what happens in front of you in the neighborhoods this would affect. Richard's response was immediate. This is an emotional manipulation, he said. A woman who's been spiraling for months because she can't handle the responsibility my brother left her. She's cherry-picking data. She's misleading the board. And she's made decisions in the past 24 hours that suggest her mental state is increasingly unstable. My mental state is fine, Victoria said, and I have witnesses. I have documentation. And as of 1 hour ago, I have a journalist at the Baltimore Chronicle preparing to publish a story about this exact scheme. That story goes live in... She checked her phone. In 2 hours. The boardroom went very quiet. Thomas Worth, the oldest and most senior board member, spoke for the first time. A journalist? David Chen, Victoria said. He has copies of all of these documents. The story includes interviews with board members who expressed ethical concerns about this merger. The story will run whether you vote yes or no. But how you vote determines whether you're on the right side of that story. Patricia looked at the documents in front of her. I'm voting no, she said. Gerald would have voted no. And I'm not betraying his memory for Richard's profit margin. James nodded. No, he said. Victoria's right. This is displacement. This is extraction. This isn't development. Harrison leaned back. No, he said. I didn't understand the full scope before, but I understand it now. One of Richard's allies shifted uncomfortably. I don't know, he said. This is concerning, but nothing, Thomas Worth said. He'd picked up the financial documents and was reading them carefully. He's been manipulating these projections. Look here. He's assuming 40% higher demand than Stratton's own market research supports. He's building in profit through falsified projections. That's not falsified, Richard said sharply. That's aggressive optimization. That's fraud, Thomas said. And I don't care if you're my colleague or not, Richard. You've committed fraud, and we're not voting for it. The vote happened right there, in the boardroom, without any formal procedure. Victoria, Patricia, James, Harrison, and Thomas against. Richard and his two allies for. One abstain. The merger was blocked. 511. Police arrived at the boardroom at 8:30 p.m., courtesy of an anonymous tip that fraud was occurring. They took statements from everyone present. They reviewed the documents. They contacted the State Attorney General's office and triggered an investigation that would take months, but would ultimately result in charges against Richard Ashford for fraud, misrepresentation, and attempted theft of shareholder value. Marcus sat in the hallway while Victoria spoke with investigators. He could see her through the glass walls of the conference room, see her telling her story with the same calm composure she demonstrated from the beginning. But her hands were shaking slightly, and Marcus understood that the adrenaline that had carried her through the past 36 hours was beginning to wear off. The journalist David Chen arrived at 9 p.m. and began interviewing board members for his follow-up story. The first story had been published at 6:30. CEO breaks silence on family corruption scheme. And already it was starting to ripple through media networks, social media, the consciousness of people who believed in development, but didn't necessarily understand its cost. By 10 p.m., Marcus received a call from his department. There had been a security inquiry about him. They wanted him to come in for a formal interview about his involvement in an incident with a CEO. He agreed to come in the next day. By 11 p.m., Victoria emerged from her interview with the state police. She looked exhausted, relieved, and completely wrung out. It's over, she said. The investigation is officially opened. Richard will be arrested tomorrow or the day after. There's nothing he can do now. You did it, Marcus said. You stopped him. We did it, Victoria corrected. You did it. If you'd driven past me in that blizzard, if you'd called the police like you should have, none of this would have happened. The families in Riverside would have lost their homes, and I would have been complicit. And everything would have been different. The next morning, Marcus returned to his apartment to get fresh clothes and check on Zara. She was with Mrs. Patterson, eating breakfast. And when she saw him, she ran to him and held on like she'd expected him to disappear again. I'm okay, baby, he said. Everything's okay? But he knew that wasn't true in the simple way she needed it to be true. His job was in question. His relationship with his department was complicated. He'd broken protocols and stepped outside his role as a city employee to get involved in something he had no official standing in. That afternoon, he went to the municipal building for his formal interview. His supervisor, Carlos, met with him privately first. You did something, Carlos said. It wasn't a question. I helped someone, Marcus said, or someone who needed help to stop something bad from happening. That's not how the city works, Marcus. We have protocols. We have procedures. We can't have employees getting involved in corporate disputes or whatever this is. It wasn't a corporate dispute, Marcus said. It was about 312 families losing their homes because the developer decided profit was more important than people. And if doing the right thing means I lose my job, then I lose my job. But I'm not going to apologize for it. Carlos was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, There's an investigation. The state's looking into whether you acted as an agent of the corporation, whether you were compensated for your actions, whether your official position was leveraged inappropriately. I wasn't compensated, Marcus said, and I didn't leverage my position. I used my personal time, my personal resources, and my personal judgment. That's all. That might be enough, Carlos said, but we'll see what the investigation determines. In the meantime, you're on paid administrative leave pending review. Don't come into the office. We'll contact you when we know more. Richard Ashford was arrested on Friday at his home, charged with fraud, grand theft, and conspiracy. His lawyers immediately began working on bail and defense strategies, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The email chains were clear. The financial projections were manipulated. His intent was documented. The board held an emergency meeting on Saturday morning and voted to remove him as executive director. The vote was unanimous. Even his allies couldn't justify keeping him in leadership. Once the fraud was proven, Victoria was named CEO officially, given control of the entire company with a mandate to clean it up and restructure it, and her first act as sole leader was to announce that Ashford Development would not pursue rezoning in any of the 3 neighborhoods Richard had targeted. The second act was to announce the creation of the Ashford Foundation for Community Preservation, a non-profit entity funded with $50 million of company capital. Its purpose? To work with communities to create affordable housing, to prevent displacement, to prove that development could serve people, instead of extracting from them. The third act was to create a position, Director of Community Liaison at the foundation. The job description called for someone who understood the community, who had lived through displacement, who knew the human cost of development decisions made without the participation of the people affected. She offered it to Marcus at a quiet lunch at a restaurant near the harbor. $85,000 a year, Victoria said, sliding a document across the table. To start. Full benefits, retirement plan, stock options as the foundation grows. You'd be responsible for connecting displaced families with resources, for ensuring their voices shape development decisions, for building community partnerships. Marcus looked at the document. The salary was nearly double what he made at the city. The job was legitimate, real, substantial. Why? He asked. Because you understand what needs to happen, Victoria said. Because you grew up in the neighborhood we're trying to save. Because you understand that development isn't abstract. It's personal. It's about whether families have roots or whether they get scattered. It's about whether communities survive or whether they get erased. You're trying to assuage your guilt, Marcus said. It wasn't unkind, just true. I'm trying to do something meaningful, Victoria said, and I can't do it without you. Marcus thought about Zara, thought about the security her salary would provide, thought about the difference $85,000 a year would make in his life, thought about what his employment would mean for Zara's future. He thought about the families in Riverside. Okay, he said, but I need you to understand something. I'm not your conscience. I'm not your way of making this right. I'm going to do this job because it matters, but I'm going to do it my way. And sometimes my way is going to challenge your decisions. I'm counting on that, Victoria said. I don't need someone who agrees with me. I need someone who tells me the truth. The state's investigation into Marcus's involvement took 2 weeks. It included interviews with the municipal building, with Victoria's team, with his supervisor. It determined that Marcus had acted as a private citizen, not as a city employee, that he had used no city resources, that he had leveraged no official position, that his involvement, while extraordinary, was personal and protected by law. His department cleared him, officially stated that his employment was secure, that there was no wrongdoing on his part, that his administrative leave was lifted. But something had changed. He received a call from his supervisor on Friday. You're welcome to come back to your position, Carlos said. But I'll be honest, you're on people's radar now. You're the guy who got involved in a CEO scandal. Some people think you did the right thing. Some people think you violated protocols. Either way, there's attention on you that wasn't there before. Marcus understood what Carlos was really saying. His career at the city had a ceiling now. He'd be passed over for promotions. He'd be watched more carefully. He'd be seen as unreliable, willing to break rules, willing to put personal ethics above organizational loyalty. He took the job at the Ashford Foundation. His supervisor told him he understood. You'd be an idiot not to, Carlos said. Better pay, better position, actual power to shape something. Just know you're burning a bridge with the city. I know, Marcus said, but the bridge isn't as important as what I'm doing now. The Ashford Foundation's offices were in a renovated warehouse in Riverside Corridor, a statement of intent, a commitment to the neighborhood they were trying to save. Victoria's name was on the door. Marcus's name was on the door as Director of Community Liaison. Their first program was the Community Land Trust, which worked with families to purchase their homes at below market rates, providing down payment assistance and financing. That didn't require the predatory lending that had extracted so much wealth from communities like Riverside. Their second program was the Family Stabilization Initiative, which provided rental assistance to families at risk of displacement, bought time during transitions, gave people space to breathe and plan. Their third program was the Community Voice Partnership, which made sure that any development in neighborhoods where they worked had to be approved by resident councils, that community needs were centered in decision-making, that families had actual power in the process. Marcus worked with Patricia and James and the other families who'd almost been displaced. He helped connect them with resources. He helped them understand their options. He helped them stay in their homes, in their neighborhood, in their community, and Victoria managed the business side, managed the development side, managed the investment side, She understood markets, understood finance, understood how to make development profitable, while keeping it community-centered. They didn't see each other often. They were busy, both running separate departments. But when they did see each other, there was something present between them that neither of them had named. Something that had started with a blizzard and a broken car. And a stranger who couldn't drive past suffering. 3 months after the foundation was established, they held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first new affordable housing development built under the community partnership model. 30 units, designed with community input. Built on a vacant lot that had been part of the displaced neighborhood's landscape. Families who would have been scattered across 3 counties got to stay. Patricia got to stay. The young couple with the infant got to stay. Children who would have been uprooted stayed in their schools, in their neighborhoods, in the community that had made them. Victoria and Marcus stood side by side as the ribbon was cut, as cameras flashed, as the community celebrated, and when it was over. When the ceremony was finished, they found themselves standing alone for the first time in weeks. "You've changed," Marcus said. "I've been changed," Victoria corrected, "by meeting you, by seeing what my uncle was actually doing, by understanding that profit without purpose is just extraction." "You could have walked away," Marcus said. "You could have let the merger happen, collected your money, lived the comfortable life you were supposed to live." "No," Victoria said, "I really couldn't have. Once I knew what was happening, once I'd seen the families, once I understood the cost, I couldn't have lived with that. Some people choose comfort. I chose to be someone my father would have been proud of." They stood there in the parking lot, the February sun beginning to set, the shadows getting long. "Zara asked about you the other day," Marcus said. "Asked when the lady from the news was coming to visit again." Victoria's face softened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that you were busy building something important, but that you'd come by soon." "I will," Victoria said. "I'd like that." A groundbreaking ceremony for the second affordable housing development, this time in the Douglas neighborhood. The second of the 3 neighborhoods that had almost been razed by Richard's rezoning plan. The sun was warm, the spring pressing gently against everything, and the community was celebrating. Patricia cut the ribbon. She'd become something of a face for the community partnership model, a spokesperson for how development could be done differently. She stood with Marcus, with Victoria, with families who would soon move into their affordable homes. Zara ran around the parking lot with other children, free of the fear that had haunted her in February, secure in the knowledge that her father had succeeded, that the neighborhood that almost died had survived, that good things could happen when people chose community over profit. Victoria gave a speech. She talked about her father, about what he'd believed in, about the choice he'd made and the choice she'd made. She talked about Marcus not by name, but everyone knew who she was talking about when she said, "There are people who understand that development is not abstract. It's about human lives, community roots, the difference between thriving and scattering. And because one person was brave enough to stop a car, to listen to a stranger, to risk everything for people he didn't know, we get to build something better." She didn't look at Marcus when she said it, but both of them knew she was talking about him. After the ceremony, they stood alone again, overlooking the construction site where new homes would rise, where families would be rooted, where displacement was prevented instead of executed. "You could have driven past me," Victoria said. "That night, you could have just kept going." "Never," Marcus said. "Not then. Not now. Not if I live to be 100 years old." Victoria smiled, and something in the space between them shifted. It wasn't yet romantic, not explicitly, but it was intimate in a way that promised more. Promised a future where the partnership they'd built could become something deeper. Richard Ashford went to trial in May. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. His own email communications, his own financial projections, his own words about what he intended to do and why he intended to do it. All presented to a jury. He was convicted on 18 counts of fraud, grand theft, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison. He was also ordered to pay restitution to families and to the city. A financial settlement that totaled $12 million. That $12 million was distributed among the families who had been at risk of displacement, who had already begun the process of losing their homes, who had experienced the trauma of knowing their community was about to be erased. It helped refinance mortgages that had been obtained under predatory lending. It helped families stay. It helped communities survive. The case became a landmark. Ashford versus State of Maryland. Establishing precedent for protecting communities against predatory development. Dressed up as growth. Law students studied it. Development companies began building community partnerships into their plans, understanding that courts now took community displacement seriously. And Marcus received a call from Patricia one morning at the foundation office. "My niece got accepted to Howard," Patricia said. "Full scholarship. She's going to study law. She says she wants to work on community development issues. Wants to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to other communities. And she says it's because of what you and Victoria did." Marcus felt something settle in him at that. Felt the weight of his choice. the choice to stop, to help, to risk everything, affirmed by the future it had created. Victoria offered Marcus a partnership stake in the Ashford Foundation at the end of their first year of operations. Not just employment, but actual equity. Skin in the game. Proof that he wasn't just her conscience, but her equal in what they were building. He accepted. The foundation expanded. A second office opened across the city, with Marcus as director of operations. His salary increased. His job security increased. His ability to provide for Zara, to give her the future he'd wanted for her, increased dramatically. He moved them to a new apartment in Riverside, the neighborhood he'd grown up in, the neighborhood that had nearly been destroyed, but had survived. He chose the same block where he'd lived as a child, where his parents had owned their house before selling it. He bought a row house, put a down payment on it using the resources of his new position, began building roots in the place where roots had been scattered before. Zara started third grade in the school that served Riverside, the same school Marcus had attended as a child. She had friends in the neighborhood. She had security. She had the gift of stability that Marcus had been willing to risk everything for. Victoria remained CEO of Ashford Development, and the company transformed under her leadership. The aggressive extractive development model was replaced. With community partnerships, projects were evaluated not just by profit potential, but by community impact. The company actually made less money in the short term, but it built something that lasted, something that people wanted, something that was sustainable. Marcus and Victoria maintained their professional relationship. They led different departments of the foundation. They met weekly to discuss strategy, to align their visions, to work together toward the future they were building. But something deeper was always present. Zara asked Victoria to her school play at the end of the year. Victoria attended. She sat in the audience and watched Zara perform a minor role as a tree in a spring forest. Watched her shine on stage. Watched her be the confident, unself-conscious child that stability had made possible. Afterwards, Zara introduced Victoria to her teacher as "my dad's partner at work." Both Victoria and Marcus understood the ambiguity of that word. Both understood that partner could mean many things. Both understood that what they had built together, the community stability, the displaced families who got to stay, the neighborhood that had survived, was a foundation for something more. When the time was right, when the work was stable enough to be built upon, when they'd moved past the urgency of crisis and into the slower building of something permanent, something would shift between them. But for now, this was enough. For now, the partnership was enough. For now, building something that mattered was the deepest intimacy they needed. Marcus never drove past that broken car in the blizzard, even though he could have, because he wasn't built to ignore suffering, even when the suffering came from a world that wasn't supposed to need him. What he found in that February darkness wasn't just a woman in crisis. It was proof that some people, no matter their power or privilege, would choose integrity when it cost them everything. The neighborhood he grew up in still looked different now. The boutiques remained. The new coffee shops stayed. The physical markers of gentrification were undeniable, but something had shifted beneath the surface. Families kept their homes. Children stayed in the same schools. Roots held, and when you build community on choice instead of desperation, when you give people agency over their futures, instead of extracting their resources, justice finally had room to take root. Victoria learned what her father had known before he died. That business exists in relationship to community. That profit without purpose is just extraction. That some choices cost everything, and those are the only choices worth making. 2 years after the blizzard, when the foundation had grown to serve 3 neighborhoods, when hundreds of families had been stabilized and rooted, when development had been fundamentally reimagined in the city, Victoria kissed Marcus, and both of them understood that it had been inevitable. Since that night, since the moment he decided that a stranger's burden was worth his daughter's fear, since the moment they chose community over comfort. If this story stayed with you, if you believe in second chances and quiet courage, and the people brave enough to risk everything for justice, subscribe our channel for more stories about grace, about redemption, about the extraordinary cost of choosing what's right.